I wanted to talk about nouns because we haven't talked about nouns. We've talked about verbs, and for you new timers, I feel like it doesn't matter if I talk about nouns right now uh, because we could have just as easily started on nouns instead of verbs because neither one is more important than the other. So I wrote this small article this morning to in the book, and of course, like everything in the book, it'll be changing and getting better over time. But this is like a basic explanation of the most basic form of noun, because in Tupi we have what's called agglutination. So agglutination, can somebody tell me what that is? Someone who's heard that word before? Maybe you study a language with agglutination. Somebody knows it.
Is it when you like put words together?
Yeah,
Like when you
yeah, yeah. It's when you put words together, and in English we have a very analytical way of changing the sentence. In English, I'll add another word, right? So if I want to say something in the future tense, I say that I will do something. I don't do, like for example, Portuguese has analytical and synthetic future. So I can say eu farei, right? Or I could say eu vou fazer. It means the same thing, but one's analytical, meaning we're constructing it using words, whereas the other one is agglutinative, where we're adding prefixes and suffixes and changing things in order to actually change the meaning. So that's not exactly agglutinative in Portuguese, but it's a similar idea. So agglutinative means we can just keep adding on different suffixes and prefixes, kind of like German words. German words get really long. It's because there's all these different components to the word that in English we would use a sentence to describe that same single word. So Tupi is like that. So basically, roots, as we know, can become adjectives, they can become nouns, they can become verbs. We can use them in many different ways. And there's certain inflections which cause us to understand whether or not it's a noun or a verb. So something about the just the objective phonetics of Tupi is that a vowel ending root like yuka, see how it ends with a tonic A? The only exception is not a non-tonic A. Non-tonic A's are not a part of the roots. And if you click on this, you'll see all the different vowels that are in Tupi. It'll switch on you. So it's like a, e, I, u, o, u, e, I, u, o, u. Those are all the vowels of Tupi. There, I've done them all for you. If it ends with one of those sounds, then that's one way that a root can look. And the other kind of root is if it ends in a consonant. So if you click on this, these are all the consonants. Some of these you won't see in the end. I just put all the consonants there for you to know what they are. So you got P, B, T, patepa, te, s, the glottal stop is a consonant. And then also these semivowels, these wa, ya, these are also consonants, okay? These are not vowels. We call them semivowels, but they don't induce their own syllables. They don't cause you to have more syllables. And that's kind of really, I don't know if that's like the definition of vowels, but when I think of vowels, that's kind of what I think is like it carries its own syllable. These semivowels don't do that, so they're kind of more consonants. So this means yuka means matar, to kill, to murder. I murder you, right? Oroyuka, I murder you. And then this care means to sleep, dormir, right? Two very similar verbs. No, not really. They're very different verbs. But they kind of, this is like a simulation of being murdered, sleeping. So when we have these root forms, if we want to turn them into a noun, what does that process look like? A noun in Tupi always ends in a vowel. There's no exception. It will always end in a vowel. So what does that mean? So in the noun form of these same words, yuka doesn't change at all. you can already just use it as a noun the way it is because it ends in a vowel, okay? But if you have something that ends in a consonant, you notice quer becomes quera, quera. Now that's a noun, okay? So that's the only difference that you need to know to turn a root from a basic root into a noun. And so, let's see. Yeah, that's basically what I wrote here. Yuka is identical, but quer and quera are different. Are there any questions about that? Or any exceptions that you might think like, oh, but what about this case or what about that case? That's a very simple rule, I'd say. It's like if it has a vowel, it's good. If it doesn't, put an A, right? Not too bad. All right, I'll move on. Feel free to say your questions out loud while I'm talking too, because I'm probably not going to look at the chat. If someone else puts a question in the chat, read it out loud for them. If you're brave enough. So those are the phonetic considerations of turning a root into a noun. I think the next main thing you want to consider are transitivity, the transitive considerations. Whether or not this root is a transitive root adds an extra step to turning it into a noun. And so when we look at yuka, right, this is in fact a transitive root. You can see it says right there, v.tr, that's verbo transitivo. That means that I need to murder something, right? Or something murders me, or there's an agent, and there's something that's receiving the action. Whereas sleep is intransitive. You can see here v.intr, verbo intransitivo, dormir. I don't sleep you. I mean, I guess there could be some sort of connotation to that, but grammatically we don't do that. So basically we sleep without any object. So as a result, if I just say she quiera, right? She is like me. She quiera means my sleep, minha dormida, my sleep. Kind of like the action of my sleeping as a noun, right? I'm describing an act. A minha dormida, my sleep. It's kind of possessive. You could talk about it like my sleep, it's mine. Or the sleep that I did, me as the subject. Means the same thing, basically. You can think of it however you want. But, that's the form of quer. And so if we just say quiera without saying she quiera, then that's just a sleep. Somebody's sleep. Nobody's possessing it. It's what we call an absolute form. Okay? With yuka, we can't do that. If you leave yuka alone, it's missing something because of its transitivity, right? It's a murder. A murder of what? Right? Murder of what? What was murdered? It's a transitive verb, so in Tupi, we cannot leave this transitivity empty. We need to specify what the object is of the root, whether it's a verb or whether it's a noun, right? You need to specify the object, whether it's a verb or whether it's a noun. So, in this case, she quiera gives the idea that it's possessive. Now, in this case, she yuka, using the same exact form, because it's transitive, the she is actually in the object place instead of the subject place. Does that make sense? So this is describing that I am what is being murdered. My murder as the object, because it's transitive. You see? If I wanted to talk about my murder in general, like all of the murders that I do, let's say I'm a soldier and I was talking about all my murders, then it would be something like she moroyuka, right? And this moro that I'm putting in there means people. It's like a generic noun. It's saying like my murder of people, right? We need to talk about what it is as opposed to maybe she sooyuka or she mbaeyuka, which is like my murder of animals. Those are different things, right? So Does that make sense, everyone? Basically, to the left of an intransitive root is the subject place, but to the left of a transitive root is the object place. That's all. And we use the same pronouns, you know, to possess these things. We use she and de, that kind of stuff. So it may be confusing as to whether a she is being an object or being a possessor, but you'll know that because of the hierarchy of how we resolve these things based on the transitivity. You say, oh, I know that yuka is a transitive verb, so because this root is a transitive root, it will necessarily have an object directly to the left of it at all times. That's a rule. And here's a tip. If we write it without the space like this, sheyuka, it kind of feels a little bit more like stuck together, you know what I mean? Like they're actually one word, because in reality, they're stuck together. Like the object and the root, they're stuck together. You need to have the transitivity involved. So just to show you guys here, I made this little table. And it shows you just the difference of, you know, because like I said, yuka could be a verb or it could be a noun, right? And so how do you know whether I'm using it as a verb or a noun if it doesn't change the way that kera changes, right? Like with kera, it's obvious. We added an a. Oh, that's the noun form. There's no a. Oh, that must be the verb form. But with yuka, it's not obvious. So the reason you can tell is because it looks different when you actually use them. You use different pronouns. So here you can see nde sheyuka, right? So your murder of me. I am the object. Sheyuka, I'm being murdered. And nde, you're the subject. Nde sheyuka. And we're talking about it as an action like a noun. Okay? Whereas here, if we have sheyuka yepe, yepe is a verb pronoun, right? So that means you murdered me. We're talking about it as a verb. And similarly, if we switch it around, right? My murder of you, all we have to do in the noun form is change where these pronouns are. Okay, now I'm in the subject place, and you're in the object place. She, nde, yuka. My murder of you, and I'm talking about it as a noun. Whereas here, I'm stating that I did murder you, or I'm going to murder you, or I'm murdering you, right? There's no tense in Tupi. So she, oro yuka. There's a different pronoun for when it's being a verb. Does anybody have any questions? This is all that I've written today, so I'll scroll back up to the top, and if anyone has any questions or comments, or if you just want to tell me what I just said in your own words to make sure that you really grasped it, feel free.
I don't quite understand the difference between iepe and oro. Maybe it's something we guys saw like in the previous classes. Like
yeah, this is something we went over fairly quickly, but this is also something I want you guys to go over in your own time a lot. This verb's indicative mood it covers a lot of stuff in here. So let me direct you to exactly where that is. So the case that we're talking about here is when the second person is the subject, but the first person is the object. You kill me, right? So we click on here, second person subject, first person object. In this form, for transitive verbs, it like all the different kind of forms have their own pronouns, which makes it a little bit complicated, but the quiz I'm going to show you later will help you memorize these things. So we'll go over that in a bit. But just to explain to you, when it's the second person subject and the first person object, whether it's singular or plural, it's going to have this object, verb, subject form, always. So it's going to look like this. Kutuk means kutukar, right? It's Portuguese. It's actually Tupi. So to spear, to stab. Um, she as the object, kutuk, because in these nominal forms, the object is always at the left. It's still true. In this case, the object is always on the left side of the verb. She kutuk, you stab, and then yepe. That just means ende, right? That's just a different form of the pronoun. It just means the second person singular. Whereas if you say she kutuk peyepe, that means y'all stab me. A group of you, all of my students are stabbing me, right? That would suck. And it can happen to ore as well. So ore kutuk yepe, you stabbed all of us. Okay. The flip side of that is, right, if we switch that, when the first person is the subject and the second person is the object, so I'm doing something to you, the second person object pronoun actually becomes this oro. So instead of nde, it just turns to oro. And instead of pe, it turns to opo. And I think there's probably some proto-linguistic like connection between ere and oro, because they're both, similar sounds, but I haven't taken any time to prove that or anything. It's just an itch, So if we look at this, epiak. Epiak means to see. So I saw you. She oro epiak. It's just, in the case where it's the first person or the second person, we use these oro and opo. So ore, oro, epiak. That's all. So yeah, it is something that you just have to learn. It's just the way that it is. No logic behind it. Any other questions about anything really? Yes, Miriam.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure I really should be asking questions because it's my first time here, but something you mentioned there are no tenses in Tupi Antigo.
Correct.
How do you express future or past? Do you then use an adverb of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought so.
And let me amend what I said. There's no verb tenses in Tupi. Nouns, on the other hand, can have tense, right?
Bloody hell, what do you mean?
So, for example, if I say something like, let's say this wasn't an already written book. Let's say I was writing a book, right? And I want to say that this is something I'm writing. Something I'm writing would be remi quatiara. That's the word I would use. What it is that I am writing. She remi quatiara. Now, you notice how this ends in a. Remi quatiar a. That's the same noun. That's the same noun that I'm telling you about. This ending where you add on an a at the end. So if I were to take that a away, it becomes like a stative verb. Sheremi quatiar, like it's like what's being written by me instead of what is written by me. So instead of that a, if I put in that goes to the future tense. So I'm saying sheremi quatiarama. This is what I will write.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So we put it in the noun. So you can express similar things like I'm going to write this book. But instead of saying I'm going to write this book, you say this book is what will be written by me.
Okay.
Okay. It's
interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So
completely different thing.
Yeah, that's an advanced question. And we'll get to that probably in the next coming weeks. I'll expand on these nouns and the different forms. I think nouns are probably the most complex use of Tupi. When we try to express things with nouns, but they're also the most, because they're so complex, we can do so much with them, like those of us who study Tupi and we speak with Tupi on a daily basis, it's very hard for us to conceptualize the bounds at which we can actually use all the prefixes and suffixes that there are, and because we come from these Eurocentric mindsets. So I think nouns, at least for me, are something that I can spend a lot more time studying and getting better at than the verbs. The verbs are kind of more, they're a little bit more compact, and the rules are a lot less freestyle. You have a little bit more it's a little bit more rigid with the verbs, I'd say.
Okay.
But yeah,
Thank you.
so we can have, so for example, here's one, you know. Let's go in the dictionary. I'll show you some examples of this. So Ibira. Ibira. You guys know what that is? What does Ibira mean?
A tree.
Yeah, it's a tree. Then if I want to make something past tense, we have something like puer, right? So puer is this suffix that brings things to the past tense. Antigo, velho, passado, acabado. And if I say ibirapuera, right? That's a dead tree, an old tree. A tree, something that used to be a tree, maybe some rotten wood. So then we have the park in São Paulo, Ibirapuera, right? So that's where that comes from. It's the past tense of the noun that is trees, right? So those are, you can see anything that ends in uera in Brazilian place names is a past tense noun. It's expressing something that used to be something else, right? And I guess I'll give you guys some just a little sneak peek about what I was going to teach you further. But I think it's nice to have an easy lesson, right? At once in a while. This isn't too much stuff, right? It's like, okay, you want a noun, put an A at the end. The only thing is probably this transitivity stuff will take a moment to get it, but it's not too much, right? Not too much. All right. Does anyone want to say anything before we move on to looking at the quiz?
No.
Let's do it. Okay. Here's the quiz. So, I added these buttons on the top so that you can turn off all of these other moods. So far, I've only taught you the indicative mood. There's 4 more moods to learn. Some of them are easy, some of them are hard. I would say the permissive's easy, the imperative is easy, the gerund is really hard, and the circumstantial is medium hard. But the indicative is what we're on right now. So when you load up the quiz, you'll click on this, and then you can choose all of the ones that you want to study. So for now, we'll just leave it on the indicative because that's what I've taught you. And then the 3 things that I want you to guess from this sentence, the idea is that you're going to use this to train your brain subliminally to the patterns of how to deconstruct these words, right? So just to bring some linguistics terms into this that I learned for my test yesterday, Noam Chomsky from MIT, he says that there is general grammar, right? And so any language can have what's called a deep structure and a surface structure. And there are phonetic phonetic rules and different things that happen that cause us to transition from the deep structure to the surface structure. So the deep structure is just who's the subject, who's the object, what's the tense. There are all these technical linguistic terms. And then the surface structure is how do we actually express that in a language, right? So in theory, if we go back to the deep structure, we can take that deep structure and convert it into any language because it's like a universal abstract grammar. So anyways, that's too much. Basically, this test is to put it into your brain subliminally without you having to read my book too much, right? If you start to wonder like, oh, why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? Then you can go back to the grammar, look at the verb section and read about the indicative mood and find the specific case that you're looking at and read the specific rules as to why it's doing that. But, best case scenario, you can just play this quiz and you never have to look at that ever again, and you can just say, I don't care about that text, I just played the game and now I know, naturally. I can't explain it, but I know. So the way it works, who wants to guess the mood? This will be the easiest question. What mood is this in?
Indicative.
Yeah, good job. Because that's the only one I have enabled. Who is the subject of this?
Us, inclusive.
Yes, exactly. Yande, right here. Click it right here. And who is the object of this? These are our options. We have no object, which would mean that it's right here, this null. That would mean that it's a intransitive verb, right? Intransitive verbs have no object. There's she, nde, ore, yande, pe, I. This I is the third person for all of you. Then there's yo, which is the reciprocal object, and there's ye, which is the reflexive. So who wants to guess which object is in this one? Do you know, Mateus?
Yeah.
Yeah? Good job, Gustavo. Good job. So it's all going to turn green if you got it right. And then it'll tell you what the root word is. So you look at the root word, you say, okay, it's okesun. What does that mean? Okay, it's a transitive verb. It's also a pluriform. It means tomar adianteira a, adiantar-se a, cerca pela frente. Who wants to translate this into English? Like, to go forward?
I don't know. Tomar dianteira, take the lead.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that, right? So then we look at this and we say, okay, there's the root. The object is ye, right to the left of it. Then we have the ya, which is part of the conjugation. And then we have the pronoun, right? So we understand that the subject, we, are taking the lead of ourselves. I guess that's how you would understand this. Sometimes these aren't going to make any sense because these are just being pragmatically, basically I took every single verb in the dictionary and every single possible conjugation that every single verb could have, and I generated all of them. And this quiz just grabs them at random. So you're just learning actual uses. So sometimes the semantics aren't going to make sense. Like it's going to be a really weird sentence. But it's still good to practice trying to do the translation. Once you know what the subject is, you know what the object is, you know what the mood is, you can kind of look at it, deconstruct it with your brain, and say, okay, next question. Who wants to do this one? I want to hear all three.
Well, the first one is still indicative. That's the only thing you have.
Very good, very good. Take the easy ones. Julia knows how to get it. And then, so what is poru? Is that the verb pronoun?
Peru is the verb.
Yeah. So if the verb. So now we got to figure out, is this the subject or the object? What goes to the left of the verb?
It's the subject, and it's us. Indicative.
Is the object, no?
Is it the subject or the object? All right. Tell me why you think it's the subject, Gustavo.
Because it's the left of the verb. Say it's the one doing the action.
But didn't you just said that the object was actually to the left?
Yes, exactly. Let's take a look. Let's put what Gustavo said, and we click on it just so I can show you what it looks like when you're wrong. It gives you red on the parts that you got wrong. So then you can look and you can see that, okay, yande poru ae. And then we can click on this. It'll take us to the dictionary, and we can take a look at the whole table to see how all of them look. So then we can refresh our brain and say, okay, where did I get this wrong? What is what? So in these forms here, you see where the subject is this. This is where it's free. you can mess things around. This is the most verb-looking form in this column right here. And also these two columns because they're also technically like considered third persons. So those three columns have it free. The rest of the columns, all the rest of the columns, the object is always going to go on the left. Always. Okay? So if it doesn't look like the object is the third person, it doesn't have this object pronoun in the middle with the conjugation and stuff, then the object is going to be on the left. Okay? All right.
Ah, okay.
Okay, that's really nice.
Sweet. All right, next question. Let's do it again. This is a similar form. So now that I've told you that, who wants to take this one on?
Okay, so for the mode, it's indicative.
Great.
So the object is ore. Is that it?
Great.
Ae.
All right. And we send that. Congratulations. Cool. And so what does this mean? Derrubar, fazer cair. So what does this mean? He or they made us fall down. Ore mo parar ae. Okay? They made us fall down. That's a real sentence. That actually makes sense, right? That's good. They made us fall. Cool. Let's do another one. Here we've got that special pronoun. Who remembers what that pronoun is? I'll do the first one. I'll take the easy one. If you're wrong, the quiz will tell me, so I'll take guesses.
So the subject is pe, something. Pe. And then the object is yande.
Ende. Close.
Is it? No.
The subject
Close.
is ende.
Ende. Okay.
When it's pe, it starts with a p. It's peyepe. So it's the same thing. You got really close. You're right. It is the second person, okay, but it's the second person plural. And the only difference between all of the forms, let's just take a look at this, just so you make this association in your head. So here's the pronoun, ben. That means y'all, like the subject pronoun, ben, y'all. Here's what it looks like, pe. This is the prefix, pesepiak. The pe is also going to be that subject. Then when we look in this form, there's also, it starts with a P, peyepe. And then if we go down to this last form, instead of oro, it's oppo. So try to associate the P with the second person plural, okay? All of the pronouns of second person plural have P's in them. That's a good thing to remember. All right.
Very good.
All right, let's see, one more, let's see. Ae oye atiman.
Indicative.
Yeah, there we go. That's the best question.
That was hard.
That was hard.
The subject is ae.
Okay, good. This is one of the cases where the object is still to the left, but it's stuck, right? This is your object. So it's a reflexive. I'll put that in there. Oh yeah. And so you'll be able to see this over time. So what does atiman mean? Fazer girar, fazer voltar, fazer retornar. Okay? So they made themselves turn around. That's what this means. They made themselves turn around. Arrodear, right? Pretty cool. That's reflexive. Oh, we got 12 out of 15. You think we can get 100% on this? All right, let's do this one now. This one looks like a different form. Indicativo.
Is the subject yonder?
Yeah.
Perfect. And so what case when it's the first person subject has a special pronoun? Not so this is a good way to think about it. There's only 3 different people in Tupi. Technically there's another one, but I haven't taught you that yet. But that's also third person. So there's first person, second person, and third person, right? So the only case where it's different, where it's like special and it doesn't always have the object on the left, is when the third person is the object, right? So if you figure out that the first person is the subject and you look at the form and you don't see that E or the S, then it can't be the third person. So by process of elimination, right, it has to be a second person object because it doesn't have the form of a third person object. And you also don't have a reflexive pronoun. So given that this is a second person, which one is it? Is it nde or is it pe?
Mm. Hmm.
So the pe will always have a P. Since it's an R, that looks more like ere. Oro, ere, and de. Oops. Did I click OK? So yeah, see it's in de. So that's oro. If it was pe, it would be opo. So what does this mean? Moyurue. Fazer a boca ter gosto. Wow, that's interesting. Fazer ter vontade de comer. That's a good one. That's a good verb. Moyurue. I've never seen that before. I'm gonna start using that. That looks good. That makes my mouth drool. That's how we would say that in English. That makes me drool. What is it saying? Yande oro moyuru. Wow, that is a seductive thing to say, huh? It's saying I make you want to eat. That's what that's saying. I make you hungry. All right. Let's do this one now. This one follows the same form. This one should be pretty easy. I always like these forms. They're so simple. It's just like name, verb, name. There's no conjugation. You just put the names in.
And then the subject is ae
Yeah.
and the object is ore.
Yeah.
Very simple, this one.
Yeah. So I want to show you something as well. What if I write it like this? I'll just take the same verb here. Oops. Yeah, it's going to be tiny for some reason. What if I write it like this? Ae ore pupirar. If I put the ae in the beginning instead of the end, does that change the meaning at all?
No, does it?
No, it doesn't change the meaning at all. In this form, you can put the ae in the beginning or the end. I put it in the end just because it makes it more clear. But if you wanted, you could say ae ore pupirar. That's fine because the only rule that we have to pay attention to, the only really important rule, is that the object is to the left of the verb. As long as they're stuck together, we can say the subject before or after, because we know that that's the subject because the object is to the left of the verb. Got it? The object space is the most important space next to the verb, if it's transitive. Of course, if it's intransitive, there is no object space. All right. In this quiz, you're only going to see it like this, but I just want you to know that in these forms, the IE could go on the other side. All right, good job. What does this mean? Abrir. They open us. All right. There's a lot of things that could open. There we go. PEP. I think you got this down, Julia, huh?
Sorry, what?
You've got this one down.
Yeah, that's the one that I said before, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it was the subject be, wasn't it? Or was it? Now
There you go.
I'm confused. Was it the one I said? It was.
Yeah. And the object?
Shit. I'm doubting myself. Shit.
There you go. Enobedecer. Tornar
Ooh.
mosacara.
Mosakara.
I
What
don't-
on earth is a mosakara?
I'll tell you what, I read this book and I learn more Portuguese than I learn Tupi because the words in this book are so complicated. Enobedecer.
Mosakara.
I mean, maybe like a knight, to become a knight, maybe? Mosakara looks like it comes from this word. Momosakara, right? Mosakara. It must be a Portuguese word that comes from Tupi. Let's look it up.
Yeah. I just realized that like a bad word that I use commonly in Portuguese actually comes from to be probably.
Oh,
which
yeah?
is piroca. I stay quite a lot, and I was just typing here on the dictionary,
Is it there?
and I found what it means. Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
So it's like arranca pele.
It basically means bald.
Kind of.
That's like,
It means
like scalp.
yeah.
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 That's
Let it
pretty
be.
funny. Yeah, I mean, so there's a social aspect to that, right? Like when you start to say that a certain way of speaking is less than Portuguese, right? This is a dirty way of speaking. People start to associate the words from that language with dirty things, right? Because they only get used in lower class contexts, right? They don't get used in upper class context. So they end up gaining those connotations. So that actually happens a lot around the world with minority languages and stuff, where people end up cussing in a different language because also so other people don't hear you know? So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, this is pretty similar. Peka. Peka. Yande peka peyape. Yande peka peyape. Almost done. We got 2 more questions on this quiz. Let's see. Who else is in here right now? You want to try this one, Lua?
Is this the sujeito is pe
Okay.
and the object yande?
Okay.
I-
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a different abrir. Same cortar. Let's see. So like you're like Moses parting the Red Seas, I guess. That must have been what Anchieta used in his biblical stuff. So they part us. And notice how Yande and Peyepe are together, right? So it's like we're including the person we're talking to. So like you are parting all of us, including yourselves. This form is a little dubious, right? Who would actually say that? Usually you wouldn't use second person and a first person that includes the second person, but I put it there just because it helps with the structure. It helps you learn the syntax. Like I said, some of these are semantically dubious, meaning the meaning of them is a little bit questionable. But, you know, the syntax is what I'm trying to teach you, is just how to conjugate the verbs and how to recognize them. All right, this one's the last one. This one's kind of hard. I'm actually not sure what this is. I know it's indicative.
Can I try?
Yeah, try.
Is it both of them is ore?
All right.
Wait, no. Subject ore.
Okay, that's good. That's for sure.
What about the object? Like, what are the options?
The options,
like-
you can have no object if you think it's intransitive. Or any of the other ones. We got yo, yeah, or all the other different people.
I have no idea. I would say either ore or intransitive.
Okay, so if it was ore and ore, then we would use ye, right? Because that's the reflexive.
Okay.
So it's not gonna be ore. So you think it's intransitive? Okay, let's see if we can get 100%.
Yeah, but I'm just guessing.
Ah, that was tough. That was tough. It was the oro, because pe
Yeah.
is a transitive verb, right?
It means, yeah, transar.
If
Oh, yeah.
if it was intransitive, you would be correct, right? If this was an intransitive verb, but because it's not, that's how we understand which one it is. So it's about knowing the root and whether it's transitive or not. Some situations can make it confusing if you're not familiar with that word yet. But you know, when you put it in context, when it's just like this, it's weird. But if you're reading a whole text and you put it in context, then it's not as confusing between these two. But yeah, we got close. So esquentar, aguentar, aquentar, not aguentar, aquentar. Okay. So what does this mean? Can someone translate this to Portuguese or English for me? You got it.
I heat you up.
Yeah, we
Sorry.
we heat you up. Yeah, that's what they say to Hans Staten when they were about to eat him. You know, in that movie about the Tupi, there was a German guy that got stuck with some. I don't remember exactly who. Maybe it was the Tupi Neklia, and they were gonna eat him, but he convinced them not to, because he said his god was gonna do something bad to them, and he lived to tell the tale. That's why he has his book. It's pretty crazy story. But yeah, something I just want to show you guys before I sign off is with this pe. This is an exception. You see how it has this yo in here? So when a transitive root is a monosyllable root, meaning it only has one syllable, like pe, it's just one syllable. Instead of getting the e object, it gets a yo object, just for phonetic reasons, because it sounds more full. So it's not going to be aipe, it's going to be aiope. Eu esquento isso. I heat this up. Aiope. It gets a yo just because it's a monosyllable. This yo is not the same as a reciprocal yo, okay? Which is this yo. It looks the same. Notice, ore, oroyope, ae. Yeah, it looks the same, but there's no extra basically object. That's how you tell the difference between the reciprocal we heat each other up versus I heat that up. Okay. And yeah, that's it. So I recommend y'all to really just spend some time on this quiz, like while you're on the bus, while you're doing whatever, waiting for something. Spend an hour if you're just curious. Like, the more you do this quiz, honestly, after like 2 hours, you're gonna get to like 60%, proficiency in recognizing these verbs, and it'll make it a lot easier because you just do it automatically instead of studying the actual rules. You just, after you've seen it like 100 times, because promise me, you're not gonna finish all the questions. There's like hundreds of thousands of different configurations in here that you can go through. But yeah, this will be really useful, and as I teach you these more forms, you can start to incorporate them into your learning. They're there now if you want to get a head start, but if not, are there any questions about today's class, comments, concerns before we sign off?
Only compliments.
Okay, thank you. I'll take them. All
Very
right.
good, very good.
Well, if that's it, then I'll let you go. Have a great Saturday. Thanks for learning Tupi. Ciao. Valeu. Falou.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Bye.
much.
See ya.
It was